Hi guys, first up, a big well done to everybody that took part in our lesson today about rounding numbers. I'm just doing a quick follow-up video for you that you can use to practice what we learnt today. So, we are rounding numbers. Hopefully you can remember the rules, but the first thing we're going to do is watch that video again because although it might be a little bit cringy, the good thing about cringy songs is they stay in your head, so then you will remember the rules for rounding numbers. So, I'm going to play this video. If you are really confident, you can skip ahead, but I do suggest you watch this anyways because it's a really good way to remember how to round numbers.
When rounding to a certain place value, find the rounding place, then continue to look at the number to the right, man, you don't need luck. If the digit's 5 or more, then you round up. If the digit's less than 5, then you round down. That's how the rounded number was found.
So, this is really good because it explains it very clearly. So this here says round to the nearest tens place. I'm going to play it one more time so you can listen to the instructions.
When rounding to a certain place value, find the rounding place, then continue to.
So you first find the rounding place that you have to continue to. So when it says continue, that's because remember after our 8, everything else afterwards will be zeros. So first up, you find the number that you're going to round to. That's our 8. Then, what do we look to? Do you remember? Is it the left or is it the right? It is the right.
Look at the number to the right, man, you don't need luck. If the digit's 5 or more, then you round up. If the digit's less than 5, then you round down. That's how the rounded number was found.
When rounding up, the rounding place goes up by 1. When rounding down, it stays where it had begun. The numbers to the right of the rounded digit, if changed to zeros, then it's legit.
So, when it rounds to the nearest 10 place, what you need to remember, if you're rounding to the nearest 10, rounding means that you make the number easier to solve. So anything after our tens place becomes 0. So that's why you then, the 6, after you've used the 6 to round up, you actually put in a 0 because everything after your rounding number needs to become a 0. The whole idea of rounding numbers is using zeros instead to make it easier to solve.
Zeros, then it's legit.
When you need to find out an approximate amount, rounding gives you numbers that are easy to.
So, and again, you can see here, with rounding 986 to the nearest 10, you can see the number line over here. So you've got your tens, 980 and 990. 986, you can see that it's past our 5 point, it's 5 or more, so it's actually closer to this 990 than it is to the 980. So that's why we say that we round up, because it's closer to 990 compared to 980. Can you guys see that? So on a number line, you can see the 10 before, and the 10 after. It is closest to our 990. So that's why 986 is rounded up to 990, because 86 is closer to 90 compared to being close to 80.
Count when you need to find out an approximate amount. Rounding gives you numbers that are easy to count.
When rounding to a certain place value, find the rounding place, then continue to look at the number to the right, man, you don't need luck. If the digit's 5 or more, then you round up. If the digit's less than 5, then you round down. That's how the rounded number was found.
When rounding up, the rounding.
So we'll go back to our problem. So we're saying we need to round these numbers to the nearest hundreds place. and they've already gone ahead and they've highlighted for you. Our first step is to find the place value you're going to round to. So here's my hundreds. I look to the what. You look to the right. So this number to the right tells us whether or not we need to round our 2 up or whether it needs to remain the same. If it's 5 or more, we round up. So do we need to round this number up? Yes, we do, because 8 is bigger than 5, so that means we round our 2 up to 3. So that would make it 300. Now what about 222? Again, we're rounding into the nearest 100, so we look to the right, and this number here tells us if we have to round up or down. If it's less than 5, we need to keep our number the same. So, do we need to round our number up or keep it the same? We have to round this number down. We'll keep it the same because it's 2, it's smaller than 5. So, rounded down, it would be 200. So, it wouldn't be 224, it would be 200. That's to the nearest 100. Compared to this number here, to the nearest 100, it would be 300 because 8 is bigger than 5.
The right man, you don't need luck. If the digit's 5 or more, then you round up. If the digit's less than 5, then you round down. That's how the rounded number was found.
When rounding up, the rounding place goes up by 1. When rounding down, it stays where it had begun. The numbers to the right of the rounded digit get changed to zeros, then it's legit.
When you need to find out an approximate amount, rounding gives you numbers that are easy to count.
So again, we'll look at this number again on the number line. We have 284, so to the nearest 100, we'd either have 300 or 200. 50, like 5, is always our middle point. So if our 8 is larger than our 5, that's why we round up to 300. You can see here this point is where 284 is. It's much closer to 300 than going all the way down to this 200. So we round up to 300.
When you need to find out an approximate amount, rounding gives you numbers that are easy to count.
Here's a trick to use to help you choose where the digit to the right tells you to move. Draw 0 to 10 on the hill with 5 on top. A car drives until it comes to a stop. If it's 5 or more, it moves forwards. If it's 1 through 4, it moves backwards. Forward rounds up, backward rounds down. Just a little trick to help you round.
So this is really, really helpful. You can imagine it like a hill, and if the car was to stop anywhere between 0 and 4, it would roll backwards. So rolling backwards is like going down. Okay, backwards means down. But if your car is 5 or more, it would keep going forward, which is like rounding up. So that's a really good way to remember. You could always draw on a piece of paper a hill. You can even draw a little car if you want by the side, and remind yourself that 0 to 4 means the car would go backwards, and just think of it like a hill. If you did stop at 3, the car would roll back down again, so it would go down. If you were at 5 or more, 5 to 9, then your car would keep going forwards. Forwards is the same as rounding up. I think it's a really good idea, and I think you should definitely draw that on a piece of paper or write that down somewhere, because that will really help you to remember.
When you need to find out an approximate amount, rounding gives you numbers that are easy to count.
So we'll stop there. So, the key steps for rounding numbers. What can you remember that was in the video? Number 1, find the place value you are rounding to. Look to the right. If the number is what? If the number is 5 or more, round up. If the number is less than 5, the rounding, number stays the same. Okay, so it's really important to remember that while we say it stays the same, you are still rounding it down. Okay, and we'll do a nice and easy example just with hundreds, tens, and ones. 3, 5, 6. So if I ask you to round it to the nearest 10, what's our first step? Remember, our first step is we find the place value that we are rounding to. So what number's in our tens place? 5. Then we look to the right. This number here to the right tells us if we're going to round up or down. Now rule number 3. If the number is 5 or more, then you round up. If the number is less than 5, then the rounding number stays the same. So tell me, with this number here, because it's a 6, am I rounding my 5 up or am I keeping it the same? I'm rounding it up, because if I think about my car, if my car was over here, then it would just keep going, wouldn't it? If it's 5 or more, it would keep going. Okay, so if it keeps going, that means we're going to round up. Compared to if the car had to go backwards because it was halfway up the hill, that means we would round down. Okay, so if it goes this way, which is forwards, we round up, and if it goes backwards, we round down. So if we go back to our problem, 356 rounded to the nearest 10 would give us 360. Remember, every number after our tens place would then become 0. 360. Okay, and again, if we had a number line, and we had 360 over here, 350 over here, and this is our 5 mark, 356 is about here. You can see on the number line that 356 is actually closer than it is to go all the way back down to 350. So that's why we round up. Okay? Okay, so how about we round first up, I want to see if you can say this number. If you need, you can always write the place value above it to help us remember how to actually say our number, because it can be a little bit tricky sometimes. So if you need, remember this is the 10 thousands column, hundreds, tens, and ones column. Okay, I'll move that so it's a little bit easier to see in the right place. So it's really important that you can actually read these numbers out loud correctly. So have a go, pause the video, and then I'll read it next and see if you've got it. Okay, so the way you read this number is 65,800. 834. If there's a comma, then that's when you like take a pause, but it always follows that same pattern of hundreds, tens, ones. I've got no hundreds of thousands here, which is why I start at 65,834. Okay, so the first one I want you to do, I want you to round it to the nearest. Apologies if you could hear my dad's music. Okay, round to the nearest 100. So, what is our first rule? Pause the video and say out loud, what is the first rule for rounding numbers? And if you're not confident, you can look right above here and read it. Tell me, what is the first rule for rounding numbers? Pause the video and then tell me. Okay, so the first rule for rounding numbers is you find the place value that you're rounding to. So when I say that, if I'm saying you have to round it to the nearest 100, then I need to underline my hundreds column. What number is in my hundreds column? It is 8. Next up, what's the next step? Look to the right. This number here tells us if we're going to round our 8 up, make it 9, or if we're going to keep it the same. Now, what is the rule for rounding numbers? How do we know whether or not we round it up or down? Here's a hint. Read number 3. I'm going to pause the video and read me that number 3. Okay, so you have to, if it's 5 or more, round up. If the number is less than 5, then the rounding number, which is my 8, stays the same. So if it's a 3, am I rounding up or am I going to keep my 8 the same? We're going to keep it the same. And if you have to, you can remember our hill. Our 3 is over here. So if our car made its way up here and stopped here, it would roll back down again. Okay, so if it rolls back down, that means it's going to stay the same. So that means it's going to stay as an 8. And every number after our hundreds column, because this is the number that we round it to, every other number after our rounding number becomes a 0. But we still need to add our 65 over here. So that makes 65,800. So 65,834 rounded to the nearest 100 is 65,800. Hopefully you got that. So this is kind of a tricky one because you need to now know for me, you need to remember your place value. Round to the nearest 10,000. Pause the video in a second and you need to tell me the first step for rounding numbers. What's the first thing we need to do? Pause the video. Okay, so the first step is that we need to find the place value that we're rounding to. So, place value that we're rounding to is our nearest 10,000. This sounds a little bit tricky, but it's not really too tricky. The 10,000s column is this number here. And if you're struggling, you can always write the place value above, or you can just go ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands. So it is our 6. Now, what's the next step? We look to the right, okay? This number to the right tells us if we have to round up our number or keep it the same. Again, pause the video and read for me, what is the next step? Read it or just tell me in your own words if you're confident. If you're not confident, read number 3. So, if the number is 5 or more, we round up and we go back to remembering our little hill and our car. If it's 5 or more, then we would end up going down the hill, which is the same as continuing and rounding up to the next number. If the number is 4 or more, we would get stuck and we'd roll back down again. Okay, so if it's a 5, are we rounding up or keeping it the same? We are rounding it up because 5, if we're imagining our car stops here, our rule is that it would keep going and means that if it keeps going and moves forward, we're going to go up. So that means that our 6 becomes 7. every other number after that, after our rounding number, becomes a 0. So, 65,834 rounded up becomes 70,000, and that's our answer. Nice and easy. We'll do another problem now. We'll use the same number again, just because it makes my life a lot easier. Same number, but what we're going to do instead, we're going to round it to the nearest hope I've written this already. I can't remember, to be honest. Round to the nearest 10. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video and I want you to actually do this for me without me actually telling you. So if you have a piece of paper or a Google Doc, write the answer for me. Round to the nearest 10. Pause the video, figure it out. When you're done, unpause it, and I'm going to see if you've done the same thing as what I'm about to do. So, if you round to the nearest 10, the first thing we have to do is find the place value that we're rounding to. Nearest 10, we underline it. Then we look to the right, that's our step over here. This number here tells us if we're going to round up or down. It is less than 5, so again we're imagining on our hill, it would roll back down, which means we do not change our 3, it stays the same. Everything after the 3, after our tens column, becomes 0, but we still need to add our 6, our 5, and our 8. So, 65,834 rounded to the nearest 10 is 65,830. Well done if you got that one right. Okay, now I will write a couple of problems and I want you to solve them, and then I will answer all of them. We'll go through all the answers together. Okay? Okay, so pause the video, have a go at all of these problems. If you need, write your numbers and also include your place value at the top so you can get it right, okay? And I have made some of them harder. I've included some 100,000 numbers as well. So if you need, please write the place value above the number that you write, okay? So pause the video and have a go. Alrighty, first problem is this number here. I really hope you can now pronounce those numbers, say them out loud. We've got 7, 8, 3, 8, 1. So the way we say this number is 78,381. And the first step is we are rounding it right to the nearest 1,000. Okay, so 1,000. What number's in our thousands place? It is 8. We look to the right. This number here to the right tells us if we need to round up or down. Do we need to round it up or down or keep it the same? We need to keep it the same because it is less than 5. Again, if we're imagining our car, if it was to stop here, it would roll back down again. So we keep our 8 as 8. Everything else afterwards becomes zeros because we're rounding it to the nearest 1,000, meaning that 1,000 is the last number that we have. Everything else is an 8. So your answer is 78,000. Hopefully you got that one right. Okay, next up. Is this next number, and we're going to have this number twice. Okay, so first up, can you read this number? Have a go. I'll pause it. Have a go. Alrighty, so it is 377,649, and we're rounding it to the nearest 10. Okay, so first up, we find the place value we're rounding to. We're continuing to number 4. That's our 4 is in our place value. Then we look to the right. This number here tells us if we need to round up or down. It is more than 5, so that means that we round our 4 up. So 4 becomes 5. Everything afterwards becomes 0 because we're rounding to the nearest 10. And then we still need to put our 3, 7, 7, and our 6. So rounded to the nearest 10, our answer is 377,650. Hopefully you got that right. Now, our next one we have to do is round that same number to the nearest 10,000. So first, we've got to find the number in the 10,000s column. That's 7. Now, we have to look to the right. If this number is 5 or more, we round up. If it's less than 5, we round down. So what are we doing? We are rounding up. So the 7 is rounded up because we're imagining if we stopped our car here at 7, it would have to keep going forward, which is the same as us rounding up to that next number. So that becomes 8. Everything after our 10,000s place value becomes a 0. Sorry about my zeros, they're crazy. So 377,649 rounded to the nearest 10,000 is 380,000. Oops, sorry, I just realized that I added not enough zeros. I wonder if you discovered that. Hopefully you got the same answer as me. Okay, so our next number is this number here. Now, can you read this number? It is 752,932. Okay, and we are rounding it to the nearest 100. Okay, so first up, find the hundreds. Look to our right. This number here tells us if we're rounding it up or down. Are we going to round this number up or are we going to keep it the same? We're going to keep it the same because our 3 is less than 5. And we're imagining if we were in a car and we stopped at 3, we would have to roll back down the hill again. So we'd keep our number to our 9. Everything after that becomes a 0 because we're rounding to the nearest hundred. So that means our hundreds number is the last number that we see. Everything else is going to be zeros. But we still need to add our 7 and our 5 and our 2. So 752,932 rounded to the nearest 100 is 752,900 because our 3 tells us that we need to keep our number the same because it's less than 5. Okay, now, last one. Same number again. Oh, and I know what I've done. 100,000, right? So, first up, what number is in our hundreds, thousands column? It is 7. Look to the right. If it's 5 or more, we round up. If it's less than 5, we round down. So our 7 here, do we round it up or do we keep it the same? We round up because our rule is if it's 5 or more, we have to round up. So that becomes 8. Everything else after our hundreds of thousands column becomes a 0 because we're rounding it to the nearest hundreds of thousands. That means every other number afterwards becomes a 0. Okay, 800,000. So, hopefully you found those okay. I tried to make it really hard for you. I think at year 5, 6 you probably don't need to know about hundreds of thousands, but I think that you guys can do with the challenge because you guys are pretty clever and you're quite quick at figuring out all this new stuff that we're learning. So, hopefully you've done well. I think it's really good that you go back and watch the video lots of times to help remember the rules. Write down those rules, maybe on a piece of paper, and also draw the hill because that really helps you to remember. If you stop between 1 and 4, you would roll down, you would go backwards, which means your number will stay the same. But if it's 5 or more, your car would continue, which is the same as rounding up. Okay, so I'm going to leave you some follow-up questions. I will do some easy and some medium and some hard ones. You can stop at any time you want. You can stop after the easy questions. You can try the medium questions. It's up to you. And we're going to have our lesson again on Monday at 10:30. So I will see you there.